Many times in my life, I've been told that I have a resha puya, a hard head. I think it's a Chaldean trait that we're called hard-headed many times. No more do we see this in the gospel than in this passage from Mark, where it's very clear Jesus is tired. He's almost, it seems like, fed up with their unbelief. All that he's done for them, all the journey that he's walked with them through, his death and resurrection, and now his appearances to them. First with Mary Magdalene, and then with the two that were on that journey to Emmaus that's mentioned here, and then the rest of the 11. They still were hard to believe. They had that hardness of heart, that heart of mind, that really we suffer with all the time. It's amazing to see how, in spite of that weakness, that human condition that we all have, that the apostles, the disciples, those that were listening and following Jesus and had gone through all of this suffering and trial because of his death, and the big question as to, what had happened with Jesus now. Was he really alive? Was he really resurrected from the dead? Did he really defeat death? This is what was plaguing the people in the time of Jesus, the ones that had seen him face to face, and of course, which plague us now. We are hard of heart. We are hard of mind. We are hard to hear and to see and to understand what God is doing in our lives day in, day out. If we look at Mary Magdalene, a woman that had suffered so much through her own trials, it says here in the gospel, Christ had defeated 7 demons from her life, cast them out. How many different kinds of suffering, you could say demons, do we go through on a daily basis? Some that are more manifest in our lives than others. And how amazing, in spite of what would seem to be a person in the gospel that would be really far from Christ, that maybe, not only is she a woman, but somebody who, isn't one of the 12. And yet, Christ, in his providence, chooses to see her and to meet her first after his resurrection. And it doesn't end there. She's the bearer, the witness that Christ depends on. In a twist of irony, you could say, the one that was farthest from virtue, the farthest from the law that God had given to the Israelites, to the people, the flock that Jesus and all these apostles were from, the one that was so crushed by sin, is now the one that Christ chooses to be a minister of his witness, a minister of discipleship in a way, you could say. Her amazement, her sense of peace, joy, and gladness that she received by witnessing Christ, who had just appeared to her in his resurrection, is that which the rest of the apostles just can't come to grip with. It says here at least 4 or 5 times. And we know that in anything in the Bible that is repeated multiple times, even with Jesus in the Gospels, there is significance there. And the significance in this passage is that of how hard it is for them to understand and to believe. Christ says so many times throughout the Gospels, "You who are hard to believe, how much longer, how much more do I have to be with you? Do I keep teaching and walking with you and journeying with you? And you still do not understand, you still do not believe, you still are not witnesses to my glory, to my kingdom." Yet, again, the irony is that these apostles that were so hard to believe, so hard to understand and come to faith, are now the ones that are going to be the messengers of the church for the whole world. They're the foundation. They're the ones that Christ says, "Go and baptize to all the nations, teaching them what I have taught you," baptizing, administering the sacraments which I have established for you, for the church. They're the foundation. They're the the shoot, the branch of Jesse that was spoken of going all the way back to the book of Isaiah, the great prophet of the Old Testament, 700 years before Jesus, who spoke of this. He said, a shoot will rise from the stump of Jesse. What is a stump? It's what's remaining of a tree after it's been cut down. Who would believe that this people that had been destroyed by the Assyrians and the Babylonians hundreds of years before, Christ did not abandon. And in fact, the Messiah, the one that would defeat death on his cross, would be the one that would come from this very group of people that were hard to believe, hard to hear, and hard to appreciate the glory that God had bestowed on them. So for us, we have such a magnificent gift of being part of the church, being of the flock that have been baptized and that have been given the sacraments, the life-giving well, the wellspring, you could say, the life-giving wellspring that the church has given us throughout the ages, all the way back to the time of the apostles. And if there's any kernel of hope that we could have, that we are part of this flock that, in spite of our hard-headedness and our slowness to believe, let's just take confidence in the apostles themselves who were chosen from Christ himself, that upon hearing, even from the words of Mary Magdalene, who had seen Christ and had received those words of consolation from him, even they, in spite of their hardness of heart at the beginning, ended up being the greatest missionaries of the church and that the world has ever seen. Amen.